Tron Ares, the third in the Tron series, following 1982's Tron, 2010's Tron Legacy. The first film, which you were talking about earlier on, written and directed by Steven Lisberger. Jeff Bridges is Kevin Flynn, computer programmer, video game designer, transported inside the world of software and, forced to take part in games. Early example of extensive CG and score by Wendy Carlos, who actually had a very rough ride with the project. Then Tron Legacy, many years later, Joseph Kosinski, he of Top Gun, Maverick and F1. Son gets a message from the father, transported into the grid, music by Daft Punk. Now, that film cost 170 million, took 400. It's okay. I mean, it's not a brilliant return, but the general feeling was that perhaps the nostalgia and love for Tron had been overstressed. Now we have this, however, which is the next Tron movie, which is written by Jesse Wiguto, I presume that's how you pronounce it. It's directed by Joachim Rønning, Norwegian director of Maleficent, Young Woman in the Sea, co-director of Kon-Tiki, which was very good, and Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, aka Salazar's Revenge, which is very, very, very bad. That was a belated sequel that no one was asking for, which brings us rather brilliantly to Tron Ares. Score, incidentally, by Nine Inch Nails, with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross also getting exec producer credits alongside Kosinski. Also producing Tron Ares is creative genius and part-time messiah, Jared. Now, I think he's Leto, because there's a whole thing on Conan O'Brien doing a routine about him being Leto, not Leto. But I have now checked so many interviews in which his name is Leto or Leto, and he agrees with all of it. So frankly, I don't care anymore. Anyway, he plays the titular Ares, a computer-generated super villain hero made inside the virtual world, now brought into the real world via a piece of kind of 3D laser printing cooked up by the slimy tech bro, Julian Dillinger. Here is a clip.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to meet Ares. This is the most sophisticated security program ever written. You want to shake his hand? Go ahead. He doesn't bite. Ares has billions of lines of code unique to him. Is it alive? That depends on your definition, Stuart. Because unlike you, he's biblically strong, lightning fast, and supremely intelligent.
Were they describing Ares there or Jared? I couldn't work it out from the...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what possibly would have meant the producer of the film to star as a character who is, quote, physically strong, lightning fast, and supremely intelligent. Anyway, so incidentally, the way in which, if you weren't watching that, the way in which Jared Leto plays that super intelligence is by wearing this really supercilious smile all the way through the film that I just wanted to punch from the first moment I saw it. Anyway, he's also, in the real world, unstable. What a shock. But self-destructs after 29 minutes because they haven't figured out a way of getting these things into the real world and them lasting longer than half an hour. However, the CEO of Encom is searching for a permanence code which has been hidden by Flynn in the grid, and Greta Lee is on the trail of it. And if it's found, it'll solve the problem. So she spends some time being chased around the real world by Jodie Turner-Smith's Athena, sidekick of Ares, and sometime in the cyber world, which, if you remember, was the whole point of Tron in the first place, which was, we're in the cyber world. But no, this basically abandons that in favor of watching very big machines in the real world knocking down very big buildings in the real world. So the film it's visually flashy, it's very noisy, it is utterly empty, and it is one of the most boring experiences I have had in a very, very long time. The main problems are these. For all the flashbang visuals, and there's a lot of flashing and a lot of banging, I didn't care about anyone or anything at any point. In the first film, you had this kind of setup, which is the guy who's a gamer is sort of, done dirty on by this corporation, and then he's sent into this machine. He ends up having to play these games, and that was a thing. And you were talking about driving around on your bikes with a torch because we'd all seen Tron and we'd never been inside the computer world. In this, Jared Leto is basically a computer program discovering human emotions in a manner which is A, not convincing, and more importantly, not in the slightest bit interesting, because the whole way he describes those human emotions is to have this supercilious, smug look on his face, like, I'm learning about human emotions, but I'm also physically strong and super intelligent. So the whole thing is bolted together like bits from other movies that have happened since Tron, and then, older texts that have been redone so much better. So you get the creator creation riff from Frankenstein. You get the synthetic human thing from Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, which was in. You get the Wizard of Oz hiding at the center of the game thing, which is really just another riff on that Ready Player One thing. You get the ultimate fighting machine and the rise of the robots from Terminator. You get the smashy crashy machines hitting buildings from Transformers. You get the real world, virtual world riff from The Matrix. And all of those movies are frankly more interesting than this. And worst of all the time I was watching it, I was thinking, I really loved Hackers. Hackers was a great film, and Hackers was massively sort of overlooked at the time. And now Hackers looks like a masterpiece. All those movies are more interesting. And watching this was so boring that I spent a large portion of the time just making up a series of terrible puns about the films that this is ripped off of. Do you want to hear what I came up with? I mean, this is what I was doing to occupy myself whilst all this stuff was happening. Wow. So, J. Arthur Rankenstein.
Nice.
Blade Bummer. Blade Runner 2049. The Wizard of Snores. Transborners. Ready Player Dumb. The Fake Tricks. And my favourite, Cackers. And that level of humour is how much this film had made me more stupid whilst watching it. I mean, literally whilst watching it, it was like my brain was atrophying inside my head because it was so immensely loud and stupid. And at the centre of it all is Jared Leto, I don't care, who looks like Electro Jesus from the outset, represents being electronic by not blinking, which is basically what Haley Joel Osment did in AI. And then there's a scene in the middle of it, which is meant to be endearing, in which the character that Jared Leto, I don't care, plays, describes why he loves Depeche Mode. And whether deliberately or accidentally, it seems to be a riff on that scene from American Psycho, in which Patrick Bateman explains why he loves Huey Lewis and the News to Jared Leto, who he then kills with an axe. And the difference with this is, firstly, the scene of explaining why he loves Depeche Mode is a lot less funny than the scene when Patrick Bateman explains why he loves Huey Lewis in the News. And the second thing is, it doesn't end with Jared Leto's character getting hit with an axe, which is a problem because it would have made Tron Ares infinitely more entertaining. Instead, we have to sit and watch this silly-haired, unblinking demigod nitwit turn into this kind of sympathetic human prophet. And there is a scene at the end of the film which, if it doesn't actually trigger your vomit response, then something is wrong with you. Best moment in the film, Gillian Anderson slaps somebody, which was quite funny. The worst thing is that it takes people like Greta Lee and Jodie Turner-Smith, who I know you're a huge fan of as well, gives them really not much to do. I mean, look, they do it a lot better than anybody else. But the thing is that being right at the top of a pile of poo still leaves you at the top of a pile of poo. So in terms of, IP recognition possibilities, the amount of money spent, the amount of soundtrack stuff going on that ought to be interesting, right? 9 Inch Nails, that ought to be an interesting thing. All that. I think this is not only the worst film of the week, but I would think a very strong contender for worst film of the year. It's absolutely awful. It'll be number 1 next week.
Wow. It could have been worse. He could have been Italian, Jared Leto, couldn't he?
At least that was funny. At least him being Italian was funny.
Wow. That sounds like a huge honking pile of birdsong. So glad I've sidestepped it. It's actually refreshing almost to hear you sound like borderline offended by the terribleness of a film. It's one of my great joys as a listener of the show.
I've used this phrase before, but it was like being shouted to sleep. It was so noisy and so uninteresting. Yeah.
There you go. Tron Ares. It's out there if you want it. Is all I can say.
It'll be number 1 next week. I guarantee you.